UFOs strike back.
Marty!
You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Everest Plateau. And we are doing this show on our emergency podcasting backup day, Thursday. We missed the Wednesday show time, so we're doing it on Thursdays, no problem. One day late, not a big deal. Happens sometimes. And once again, we are joined in studio by Marty. How's it going, buddy? Thanks for coming back.
Greetings, Earthlings.
That's right. So this is the UFOs Part 2 episode. UFOs Strike Back. Hopefully there will be 3, so we can continue that joke.
That's right.
But yeah, Marty has so much material that there might be a lot more than 3. I don't know. We'll just have him keep coming back when he can and continue this topic because it's great. And man, I really enjoyed the last show. I listened to it many times and learned something new every time. There's just so much material you had in there that was fantastic. So I can't wait to get into it with you this week.
Thanks. I did exactly what I promised I wouldn't do last time. Is I said, okay, next time I'm just going to shoot from the hip. But instead, I went and started making notes. I think I ended up with more notes this time than I had last time. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's classic. That's classic. It's like a tradition here. I make all these marks in a book. We get to like chapter 5 at the end of the first show, and then after that, Kyle's like, "Why did you skip all that stuff in chapter 3?" And so we start the next show, and then we're in chapter 3.
Yeah,
it happens all the time.
I start highlighting things, and I go, after a while, it's like, okay, I highlighted a paragraph, then it's a page, and then read the whole chapter.
I just need to read this whole chapter. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's go ahead and do space weather news from spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news. Solar Cycle 25 has begun. Solar Cycle 25 is officially underway. NASA and NOAA made the announcement during a media teleconference on September the 15th. An international panel of experts found that the sunspot number hit rock bottom in December of 2019. And since then, sunspot counts have been slowly increasing, with solar max expected in 2025. And current conditions, solar wind speed is 303.9 kilometers per second. The density is 8.8 protons per cubic centimeter. That's a little high.
Yeah.
Sunspot number currently is 0. We've had a 27-day stretch of no spots. And let's see. The neutron count today is 10.1% plus, which is rated as very high, above the space age average.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
It is high. Yeah, that's higher than most of the ones we've read before. So yeah, I don't understand this data, but well,
maybe that. I mean, obviously that neutron count thing is.
It's got a delay.
It's definitely got a delay.
Yeah.
It was not coming down, even when there were all these sunspots, and then they go away, and it's like, yeah, I'm still going up, bitch.
Yeah, that's right. So I have one story. Kyle has one story. You want to go ahead and do yours?
Nope.
Nope.
You need to do yours first.
Kyle is calling the shots.
You got to do yours first. You'll understand why.
Okay. So this one's been making the rounds, so a lot of you have probably seen this, but I had to read it anyway. This is from the independent.co.uk. Mm-hmm. It is possible...
Not a tabloid.
No. Possible signs of alien life discovered on Venus. Researchers have spotted phosphine, a rare and toxic gas, in the atmosphere of our neighboring planet, suggesting that it may be home to alien life. This discovery is not a direct observation of life on another planet, but the sheer quantity of this gas on Venus cannot be explained through any known process, leading researchers to suggest that it is a sign of alien life in our solar system. On Earth, phosphine is one of the most foul-smelling gases, with the odor of rotting fish, and it is found in places such as pond slime and penguin dung. While it is made through some industrial processes, it is also created by anaerobic organisms, including bacteria and microbes. As such, it is thought to be an excellent biosignature or indication of life, and experts in the past have suggested that this discovery of phosphine in large quantities on other rocky planets would be a certain indicator of alien life, and now it has been found on Venus. The surface of Venus is hot and acidic, and so the conditions on the ground would make any kind of life difficult, but the environment in its upper cloud decks is thought to be more habitable. About 35 miles up, the conditions are more temperate. And that is where the gas is thought to be found. Those clouds are so acidic that they would destroy any phosphine quickly, meaning that something must be actively forming it. And the amount of the gas found is such that it cannot be easily explained in any other way. An international team of researchers led by Jane Greaves from the Cardiff University reported the findings in an article, Phosphine Gas in the Cloud Decks of Venus, published in Nature Astronomy today. And that was, what's today for this? I don't have the date on it. It definitely wasn't today, but it was today when they wrote this article.
Okay.
But I think one of the best comments I saw on this was hilarious to me. Our buddy over at Poddoodles.
Yeah.
He was like, swamp gas on Venus? Right? Come on, man. That's genius. So shout out to you, buddy. That was brilliant.
All right. This is from Mysterious Universe. Move over, Venus. Russians claim to find life on a different planet. Yes, we've already got one, you see.
It's very nice.
Is there a new space race in progress besides the ones to put humans on Mars and big weapons in orbit? Just days after one group of astronomers reveals they have found phosphine gas in Venus's atmosphere that is a strong indicator of the presence of life floating around up there, a group of Russian astronomers announced they have clear images of fossils from living microorganisms and a meteorite that came from an exoplanet outside of our solar system.
Whoa.
Life that existed even before the solar system came into existence. Race over? Or is this just an early lap before the first pit stop?
Huh.
Alexei Rozanov, the chief research officer at the JINR Astrobiology Center, told the news agency RIA Novosti that he and a research team from the Paleontological Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences and the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research are about to release a collection of high-quality electron microscope images of fossils from micro-aliens found inside the Orgueil meteorite, which fell in Orgueil, France. Orgueil! Maybe that's France. It's Orgueil.
Yeah.
On May 14th, 1864. Those in the meteorite world know that the 20 stones which were collected are perhaps the most studied meteorite in the world. In fact, stories of organic matter similar to peat being found on it emerged almost immediately after its discovery, along with its unusual composition indicating it was probably not from our solar system. And yet Rozanov is touting this as a new discovery. Why? This is not a discovery, but the establishment of a solid fact that panspermia is a real phenomenon. And that was a quote. Mikhail Kaprilov, junior researcher of the Laboratory of Radiation Biology of the Astrobiology section of the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research, explains that the team used the electron microscope to look inside the meteorite, in its crevices and inner cleavages where evidence would exist that was not picked up when the meteorite landed in France. They found fossilized magnetotactics, bacteria that align along a magnetic field, and fossils similar to coccoid, the rod-shaped forms of prokaryotes, acritarchs, protists, alveolates, I don't know how to pronounce these things, and armored amoeba. If all of this is real,
Armored amoeba.
Armored amoeba. If all of this is real, this is truly a game-changing discovery. Is it real? Meteorite experts may remember the infamous Orgueil hoax. In 1965, a fragment of the meteorite, which had been kept in a sealed glass jar since it was recovered, suddenly appeared to have a seed embedded in it. An investigation found it was from a European rush, a grass-like plant. That was glued into it and covered with coal dust.
What?
The hoaxer was never found. The researchers also referenced the works of American academician Richard Hoover. Hoover, a former NASA scientist, was the author of the so-called Hoover paper, published on the Journal of Cosmology in 2011, which claimed he had found evidence of fossils in numerous meteorites. The controversial, in the scientific world, journal was criticized for publishing it, and NASA disassociated itself from him. Alexei Rozanov released a few images of the alleged fossils. See them here, and he gives a link. and promises that all will be published in November. Will they prove we're not alone in the universe? That remains to be seen. Will they end the controversies? Probably not. Is there a race on to find any kind of evidence of life on other planets than us? Roxanov has the best answer. Quote, much was found already then, but out of fear, it was not so interpreted so as not to frighten people, end quote. We'll see. So I guess he's this sort of, I don't know, Russian English right there.
Yeah.
In that quote. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I like how the Russians are trashing the Venus thing.
He's already got one, you see?
You find a gas station.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do remember, I mean, there have been, I don't remember if it's the same story, but there have been quite a few, or at least one that I recall of a, meteorite that supposedly had microbial fossils in it. And it was, I don't remember if it was called a hoax, but I do recall that it was, that they basically trashed it.
Dubious.
No one believed it. And it was like that. And then the Mars life experiment that it gets positive results, and they're like, well, it's, we don't like that. There's something
False
wrong.
positive.
False positive.
And of course, the article had to have the obligatory fear of life out in space.
Yeah, it's going to cause mass panic.
Yes.
Yeah, like they're still reading those old condon reports or whatever. All right, well.
Watcher, you give me crystal meteorite, I show.
Yeah. Yeah, Watcher's cracking some serious jokes over here on the text on the screen, so we're gonna have to not pay attention to that, so I don't laugh in the middle of Marty giving some serious data over here. So where are we going from last time? Where were we at? What did we stop at?
Well, last time we kind of stuck to the more tangible aspects of the UFO phenomena, and I would categorize that as like the first floor, right? It's the type of thing that pedestrians can walk by on the outside, look in through the window, and be somewhat unimpressed.
Okay.
Others walk in, they look around, they can pick things up and look at it. It's tangible. This time, we're going to take the escalator down, and we're going to go down another floor and then possibly a couple of more floors into areas that even people well versed in the subject generally kind of distance themselves from, because there are aspects that might make people feel uncomfortable. So I'm kind of giving a fair warning. This is my little disclaimer here that paradigms will be challenged. Some of this conversation might be a little uncomfortable for some listeners, but I think that point of being uncomfortable is what I'm getting at. This. Last time we discussed that there's ample evidence to support the fact that the U.S. government, through the media, actually suggested that there might be an extraterrestrial basis for all of this.
Yeah.
We saw that through them leaking information to Life magazine, and we sort of would get the impression that that's more or less what's going on now. From the New York Times articles suggests that they're being fed information from the Navy. Towards the end of the last conversation, I proposed a radical theory. I suggested that maybe the extraterrestrial hypothesis was purposely leaked to the public.
That's right.
To distract from a universally unacceptable
you said
reality.
You said it was a more palatable answer than what's actually going on.
Right. Yeah. So what could be so unacceptable?
Yeah.
Well, I posit that it could be something that's equally offensive to both materialist reductionists rooted in science, and organized religions rooted in faith. You know, although it could be argued that science has kind of evolved into a dogmatic religion of its own.
That's right.
Of its own. So,
shut up! It's science.
yeah. So you believe in science, but is it yesterday's science, today's science, or tomorrow's science?
Yeah.
Because that keeps changing.
Right. I believe in next week's science.
So, I want to kind of cover a couple of different individuals that have had unique experiences that are not generally the type of experiences that you see publicized in movies and documentary, even online. You generally since the 60s, more or less the model of the alien contact, is more or less based on like the Betty and Barney Hill abduction.
That's right.
And we're given this impression that it's a highly scary, abusive, violent, or violating people and doing all these things and cut and dry. Well, the reality is that that's not everything. That represents a rather small percentage of what's out there. And I'm going to start with an individual named Ray Hernandez.
Okay.
Ray is a tax attorney, an estate tax attorney from Florida. He was an adjunct professor at he was an adjunct professor at the New School of Social Research in New York City. He was a manager at the New York Transportation Authority and was a PhD candidate at Berkeley University, one of 6. So this is a very intelligent individual, and he's a lifelong atheist. In March of 2012, his Jack Russell Terrier had a stroke, and this was basically he and his wife's first child. So they really, they were just devastated by this, and the stroke left the dog paralyzed. Ray called his friend that was actually a vet. This happened on a Friday. He called the vet. The vet said, "Yeah, it sounds like it's a stroke. We're probably going to have to put the dog down." So of course they were devastated, and he said he would open the clinic on Saturday for him. So Ray went up to bed, and his wife stayed downstairs with the dog, praying to her angels that they save the dog. Ray went to sleep, and then about 6 a.m., Ray hears his wife yelling for him to come down. And he was, half asleep, so he kind of more or less ignored it, and she ran upstairs and started tugging on him. Come see, come see. She wouldn't tell him what was going on. So she's pulling him downstairs. They start going down the stairs. She's a couple of steps ahead of him. And there is this object floating in the middle of the living room. What she describes it as was like an upside down U that was brilliant. And it was floating a couple of feet off the ground. It was about 6 inches wide and about 1.5 feet tall. Ray, as he's walking down the stairs, actually sees his wife dematerialize and dog both.
Wow.
And then he got the sensation of more or less being taken out of his body in terms of his decision making. And got this feeling of being unimpressed and turned around and walked back up to bed and went to sleep.
That's right. I remember that part of the story.
You know, which is completely seems unreal. You know, not the typical reaction to a floating object. You know, in your living room.
Wife dematerializes. You're like, well, going back to sleep.
So he's knocked out, completely knocked out. 45 minutes later, he wakes up and realizes what happened.
Yeah.
And jumps out of bed and runs downstairs. And when he runs downstairs, his wife and dog rematerialize, and the dog's running around the living room like a puppy.
Wow.
Completely cured. His wife falls to her knees and starts praying and proclaiming that my angel saved him. My angels, saved the dog. And Ray says that what he saw was about a 2 foot wide and 1 foot tall rectangle that was translucent with brilliant colors just floating there. He said it was just a couple of feet off the ground, just floating there. And obviously this was a traumatic experience. Ray felt that he had like a paranormal type experience.
Yeah.
He didn't connect this to the UFO phenomenon in any way. So he started looking up, he started doing research on the internet, trying to find articles or anything, see if anyone had an experience, anything like this. And his wife insisted that it appeared to her like a small craft.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of days later, they're asleep, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, the dog starts barking at him. And so his wife gets up, and they walk down, and she walks to the back door to let the dog outside, but the dog runs to the front door. And so she goes to see why the dog wants to go out the front door. She opens the door and steps out, and then looks up, and there's this giant craft floating over their home. She's obviously, interprets this as the way she described this to her husband, Ray, was that her angels came to visit her.
Right.
Again. So Ray began investigating UFOs to see, again, if anything along those lines had been reported, because he at that point, he didn't really know much about it, but he became obsessed with it. Spent a lot of time doing research online, buying books, trying to find anything he could. His wife went, actually when she relayed that, and she said, my angels came to visit me, and described the object, Ray said, oh, that was a UFO. That wasn't angels. And her reply was, well, that's just because you're an atheist. Of course. Right. You're interpreting, they were interpreting it completely differently. Right. So 6 months later, his wife goes back to Veracruz. She was originally from Veracruz, Mexico. So she flies down to spend some time with her family down there and started praying to her angels again down there. And
is she like a Catholic?
Yes,
she's like praying to saints or something.
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
Well, she says her angels.
Her angels. Okay.
So she does this, and allegedly on several occasions, a craft would actually appear.
Wow.
One time in particular, this large craft appeared and actually was witnessed by numerous people, and it shut down the Veracruz airport.
Wow.
So this thing, there was whether there was
an
a
actual sighting of
right,
something,
and whether there was a connection between her, her prayer to the, requesting that it appear or not has any connection. It could be a coincidence, but she believes that.
Can you stop calling your angels down here, please? They're shutting down the airport.
So, she at that point started having like premonitions or precognitive dreams and things. And
It's like she's on the radar all of a sudden, right? Is that
right? And then soon after that, because she kept insisting that this was happening, Ray went outside his home one day and just halfway jokingly started repeating the same thing, calling the angels or calling it right. So, and this massive craft appeared over their home.
because he's also now on the radar. It's like
He received like a telepathic message, and this message gave him a mission.
oh.
But he didn't really understand it. And this particular sighting was witnessed by 3 other people and his daughter. So the next day, he's driving to work in downtown Miami in traffic, and all of a sudden he has this sensation that he's out of the car and he's somewhere else. And he is given this information that he is to create an organization to help inform humanity about the reality of this whatever it is. At this
phenomena.
point, right? At this point we don't know what it is, right?
So you're going to tell everybody about this thing that you have no idea what it is.
Right. Well, then the synchronicity started.
Yeah.
He gets to his office. First of all of a sudden, boom, he's back in his car. No time passed.
Okay. No missing time.
No missing time at all. Right. So even though he felt as though, there was a couple of other details, trying to give us brief synopsis, but this when he felt like he was taken out of his car, he felt like all of a sudden he was in the center of this giant wheel. More or less, he described it like a giant Ferris wheel. He's in the middle, and there's these spokes going around. But the spokes were screens, and all these screens were all these different images that depicted like out of body experiences, near death experiences, all these different types of paranormal events. And they're all on this wheel spinning around. So he's told that these things are connected, and that is part of this information that he's supposed to relay to humanity. And this sounds pretty unrealistic. I mean, I would
Sounds
be
a little
highly
bit like DMT or something.
right. I mean, it's high. It sounds highly suspicious, right? But this is a highly educated, very serious guy. This is not somebody that's gonna go out on a limb and do all this. Well, when the incident happened with his dog, he wrote letters. He sent out emails to about 10 different prominent UFO researchers. But like I said, this had been about 6 months and had no response. Well, the day that he was taken out of his car and given this message, when he got to his office, he received an email from Mary Rodwell, which is has over 30 years of investigating UFO abductions and encounters, right? And in her email, she apologizes for the delay in responding to his email, but for some reason the email had been stuck, and she had just received it that day, the same day that he received this message. So she has a long conversation with him, and then they actually ended up doing a Skype deal until the early hours in the morning. And he said, "Well, I've got to get to work, so we'll continue this discussion later." The next morning, he gets a call first thing in the morning from Rudy Shields. He is a professor of astrophysics at Harvard, who has done a lot of research into paranormal type incidents like this. And Mary had given the details of his experience to him and asked him to call on Ray to get, to see what more information he could glean out of this. Well, he was pretty impressed with Ray as well. Again, because Ray comes across as being a pretty sincere guy, and again, not a guy out to take flights of fancy, right? So Dr. Shields offers Ray to be his scientific advisor for this organization that he's to create, right?
Wow.
And gave him a phone number. And he goes, "This is my mentor. Give him a call, because your theory is the theory that you were given is exactly what he says is going on." And he goes, "Well, who is this guy? Who am I supposed to call?" And it was Dr. Edgar Mitchell.
Yeah. Yes.
For those of you that might not know who that name, he was an astronaut, an NASA astronaut. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon.
Yep. Started the Institute for Noetic Sciences when he came back, because he had this transformative experience while he was in space that just blew his mind and changed how he saw everything.
Is this where the meme comes from? The two astronauts, and one standing behind him holding the gun?
Always has been. Yeah. Might be.
So he waits a little while, and he gathers up the courage to call Edgar Mitchell.
Yeah.
And they have a conversation. And it turns out that the way these different phenomena tie together was right in line with what Edgar Mitchell refers to as his quantum hologram theory of consciousness. Edgar Mitchell was also impressed with Ray and asked him to come to his home the next day.
Wow.
He lived about 90 miles from there. So he went over the next day and met, and they had a long conversation, and Edgar Mitchell said he wanted to be a part of this organization too.
Wow.
And Ray's like, "What organization? I don't I don't know what
I just got a quest from the Lord."
Yes, he goes, "I don't have any idea of how to do this." And Edgar Mitchell told him, "Don't worry.
Yeah.
It'll come to you. That's the way it works."
Man. Well, on that note, let's take a break. Man, this is fantastic.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. We'll be right back. More UFOs.
Going down the only rabbit hole with an escalator. Here with Marty Garza in the house. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. UFOs Part 2.
Yep. UFO Strike Back.
That's right.
And like last time we did this on Part 1, I failed to introduce Marty during the show. This time I don't have to, because now everybody does know who you are, right? But
Maybe.
Still, you have a very impressive resume. I've read it off at the beginning of the last show, and so we're pleased to have you, man. Let's keep going.
Thanks. This is fun. So, okay, in the last segment, we kind of were talking about Ray Hernandez's mission that he was sent on, that he had no idea how he was going to perform.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there were a lot of synchronicities that started to happen, and he started putting this deal together. And he, along with Edgar Mitchell, Rudy Shields, Mary Rodwell, and himself, I guess, started an organization called the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research on Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. Acronym is FREE, F-R-E-E. And they have over a dozen academics on their staff, and they have been compiling a really, really impressive, probably first of its kind study on these extraordinary experiences. I'm going to not necessarily call it extraterrestrial, but they published this in a 900-page book, which I've only gotten about a quarter of the way through, but even just the first chapter, which I believe is free, it's available free online. So some of you might want to check this out because there's a lot of crazy, impressive data in this thing. The book's called Beyond UFOs: The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. This study, let me pull up my vast amount of data in this thing here. Okay, so this study, they started off by sending out questionnaires or to hundreds of different organizations to get a really broad net. And then there were several levels. I guess let me back up and explain that Dr. Rudy Shields also, let me pull up what the exact term is here. His area of expertise is in methodology. I'm sorry, another PhD that's in this is Dr. John Kilmo. He taught research methodology for over 45 years. So he was very instrumental in developing the questionnaires that were sent out once they got this sampling of individuals. There were over 4,200 respondents in over 100 countries.
Wow.
This study has 4 phases. Phase 1 and 2 were regular yes/no type questions, and then phase 3. Well, phase 1 and 2 was 551 questions. Phase 3 was 70 open-ended questions, which were, in other words, you had to write your response, and then phase 4 is interviews, in-person interviews. These surveys, to give you an idea, and they use this kind of as a filter. They wanted to make sure that all the experiencers were explicit memories. They were not obtained through hypnosis. They were not obtained through regressions or lucid dreaming, channeling, or anything. These were people that had conscious memories of these anomalous experiences. The first survey, they estimate would take the average person about 30 minutes to fill out, and that was like the first level of filtering. The second survey, which had a lot more questions, took 3 to 4 hours to fill out, and then the phase 3 questions, they said would take the average person several weeks to fill out because there are a lot of very specific. They were open-ended questions, but very specific. They wanted details of these different encounters, and I'd like to read you some of the. I'm getting this straight out of the book, and I want to read some of the conclusions or some of the data that they obtained from this, because they are not at all consistent with what you see depicted in movies or anything or television or on the internet. There's a lot of really unusual conclusions or findings in all of this. Let me pull up.
But these are people. This is all classed under people who have had what we would call a UFO experience of some kind, or just
right. They're all.
Is it a broader like paranormal or?
Yeah, well, they're paranormal, but you'll see some of this it's kind of self-explanatory as we get into the data and some of this, and again of the 4,200 respondents, 57% were female, 43% were male, 56% were between the age of 45 and 64. The mean age of the study was 49 and a half. So, that to me is a little bit counterintuitive. I would have, if I were to guess, I would have thought that it would have been younger people that were more inclined to have, anomalous experiences. According to this, no. 64% were were in the United States, 8.4% in Canada, 8.3% in Australia, 7.2% in the United Kingdom, and then there was a bunch of other countries. I'll point out that one part of this that is not completed because there was some, I guess the translation was much more difficult, but they're currently performing this study with Chinese respondents because there's supposedly a very large number of Chinese respondents that are going to be involved in this study as well. So let's look at some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely been missing from the Western data set, is like the Asian experiences with a lot of this stuff. Right?
Mary Martin, who is a abduction researcher and is Betty Hill's niece. She has been researching this for 30 plus years as well, and she has been conducting a study and doing seminars with abductees, and I guess they're trying not to necessarily use that term. I think they're referring to them as experiencers.
Yeah.
Yes, because again, the data doesn't necessarily reflect this as being a high percentage of abductions. As we would typically. Them.
Betty and Barney Hill story.
I recognize the name, but I just
okay. They're just like the poster abduction story, kind of one of the first ones, and it sort of made the whole phenomena sort of
popularized it.
Yeah, like it became widely known that they're
right. Betty and Barney Hill. It was 1962. They were driving home. In New Jersey, they saw an object at a distance and came around a bend, and it was in the road. And Barney saw figures in the what he thought were windows in this craft, and then they had missing time. The next thing they knew, they were on the right side.
I think I saw a TV.
We discussed it a little bit in the last episode. I made a couple errors. I referred to the Pleiades when it was really supposed to, the star system that she saw was Zeta Reticuli.
Zeta Reticuli.
And I went back and checked this because you made reference to how a 2D map would not be of any use.
Yeah.
She specifically states that it was a three-dimensional map.
Okay, cool.
And in fact, she was shown it from the entity was supposedly frustrated that she goes, well, where are you from? And she goes, well, how can I show you where I'm from if you don't even know where you're from on this map?
Yeah.
So, but she did specifically state it was a three-dimensional map,
okay.
And it was rotated to the angle that would be seen from Earth.
All right.
Okay, so she covered that base.
Okay.
Did they do a segment on this in Ancient Aliens?
It may have been Unsolved Mysteries.
Or maybe it was that, yeah. Because I do remember seeing like a reenactment of them driving in the car.
It might have been Unsolved Mysteries.
Maybe
I'm not sure, but yeah.
That's all I know about it.
Yeah.
Some vague memory of some TV show.
From when you were 12.
That's how little I've gone down this escalator.
Okay, this data in this study is like really complex, but I'm gonna give you like broad overviews of certain things, but it'll give you a feel for just a little bit of what's in this thing. One of the questions is, do you believe you've observed a non-human intelligence? For the United States, 57% of respondents said yes. 17% said no, and 26% said not sure. In Canada, that was 53% said yes. Australia, 61% said yes. United Kingdom was 59%. New Zealand was 54%. Germany was 67%. So we're seeing here that these people believe they were seeing intelligent, non-human entities.
And did all of these people see entities?
We'll get into that next. They are entities.
Okay, so they saw entities, and because that's what I'm trying to find out. Like, were some people like, no, because I didn't see any entities, or
that question's here, but that's just it. So it's how you would define entity. I think is part of the question here. I'll kind of jump around and I guess to answer that question a little bit better. And it says, like, for example, because this I found this surprised me. It says this question is types of non-human intelligences being encountered. The response to the questions are, how would you describe your experience with these entities? Okay. Energy beings. So this would be
Like balls of light.
right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was more or less along the lines of what Ray saw. This
Yeah.
is this rectangle, translucent rectangle, emitting a rainbow of colors and all.
Yeah.
55% of experiencers
Yeah.
describe having seen these energy beings. It's number one.
Wow.
I had never even really considered that
Yeah.
as an entity, but they
Yeah.
do. So in this study, they're considering this as an energy being. And the total number in this was, let's see. Okay. The next one was human-looking entities for 52%. Now, these percentages sound like, wait a minute, that's more than 100%.
Yeah.
No, it's because many, in fact, the majority of these respondents saw more than one type.
entity. Okay.
And that'll lead to other questions that are answered in this study. So what we typically consider to be the number one is the short gray, because there are different grays. There are different types of grays.
Yeah.
The short grays represented 51%. The next one down was the spirit or ghost form, and that represented 47%. Next were the tall grays, and these are grays that are described as being between 5 and 9 feet tall.
Yeah.
33% of experiencers saw those. The next one was hybrids, and I would take that to mean human-looking, but not entirely human.
Yeah.
26%.
Yeah, the eyes are a little too big. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
26%.
26%.
The next one were the reptilians. 25% report seeing these reptilians. The description is what I found interesting. Let me pull exactly the way they're described.
How many?
These
How
were-
many? 25? Is that what you said? 25%?
25%. These, because they're in this questionnaire, there were also questions about whether you considered the experience positive, negative, or neutral. And these had a high percentage of negative.
Negative. Yeah.
But,
People don't like the snake bros.
well, the study goes in and asking why. And I believe that's more into phase 3 where they're the open-ended questions. And it turns out that the vast majority of the people, when asked, why do you find these, or why did you consider this a negative experience, most of it was fear.
Yeah, the
Because of the
reptilians are-
way their physicality. And that's
Yeah.
because these things are described as being very muscular,
Yep.
roughly 400 to 500 pound humanoids with crocodile appearing heads.
Yeah.
The first thing that popped into my mind was Sobek.
Was what?
Sobek,
Sobek.
the Egyptian
Yeah.
god.
Okay.
The Crocodile
The
King.
Crocodile King, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of was the Crocodile King. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was rather interesting.
Yeah, that's what I've seen some, drawings or artist renditions, and they're always huge, right? They're enormous. And yeah, they're a reptilian humanoid thing with they're just kind of alien.
Right. Then the next ones were the mantis or insectoid,
Yep.
is the way they refer to them. That was 21%.
Those aren't as those are scary looking, but aren't those usually more positive?
I've
with the mantis
seen
beings?
and again, this is my perception from the reports I've read.
Yeah.
But a lot of the data in this is counter to what my impressions were. So I'm not going to say
Okay.
this definitively, but I most commonly associate the mantis as being the doctors that
Yeah.
are that are being accompanied by the small grays.
Okay, yeah.
Very often you'll hear descriptions of people that claim to have been taken onto a craft and laid on a table, and then the mantis will appear.
Yeah.
And they're the doctors, you know. So
Yeah.
This one I had never heard of. And it represented a fairly large, 15% of people reported seeing small animal types. And 13% reported large animal types. So,
Humanoid animal types?
no, they're not saying humanoid.
Okay.
They're just saying animal types.
Like they had pets or something?
No, they're saying...
Yeah, like
I don't
the
know whether
aliens,
they're-
the aliens were actually like animal-like.
Okay.
Right, they're not...
Small animals like mice or large animals like bear, maybe.
I would take this as saying that they're an animal like maybe I hadn't thought of this, but in large animal type, Bigfoot type creature
Well,
may
I was
fall
thinking
in.
bear because like the kid goes missing. He's like, oh yeah, bear, like
Yeah,
give
bear
me milk.
totally took care of me. Yeah. And the small ones are like, squirrels.
Yeah.
So, and some of the the more this thing gets into really fine detail. Again, if there were 705 questions, I think total or something. So I'm gonna just rattle off a couple.
How
of
did they convince people to fill out all that stuff? They just
Well, they said, they promoted the survey, that they were going to be doing this study. They contacted every known UFO group. They posted announcements on over 500 Facebook pages.
Wow.
I didn't know there was that many UFO related Facebook pages.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
And
did they so they weeded people out?
yeah, there was a filtering system, and I think that by the time you make it into this 4,200, they figure that these people have invested a significant amount of their time into doing this. Days.
Yeah.
Possibly weeks.
I wonder what the original respondent size was as opposed to the number of people after the filtering.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say.
Yeah.
That data may be included in here. It's overwhelming. There's so much in this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
900 pages, so there's a lot in here.
What, you didn't read the whole thing before you came over here? Come on, man.
Hell, bro.
Get out of here. Come back when you're ready.
I don't even remember what I had for lunch today, and you want me to remember? So some of the interesting data in this, just stuff that I'm just seeing in this numbers that stand out. 32% of the respondents claim that they were allowed to roam around the craft without supervision. 29% said they were taken on tours of the craft. 24% say they were allowed to operate the craft.
Sweet.
Like,
That's
what?
cool.
That's again, these are not the things you normally see reported. And
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
19% report seeing other humans on the craft. Another 19% say they were shown what powers the craft.
That I have heard of. That particular part. They're or at least there's like some rudimentary explanation given for.
Right.
Yeah.
34% consciously recall lying on a table or being medically examined. 41% claim to have seen children.
Yeah.
That
Like human children.
it just says children.
Yeah.
So I don't know if these were hybrid types, or I think
Yeah.
they purposely left that open-ended,
Okay.
and then in the latter phase, in the stage 3 phase, they will ask more
ask those
detail
questions.
of that.
Is there just offhand, is there information on what's the ratio of male and female respondents in there?
Yeah, it was.
It's like 56
yeah.
female.
I totally missed
Right,
that. Okay.
yeah.
43 or 44.
I was reading
Or
the
it's 57 and
Watcher's
43.
jokes. Okay, yeah. 57, 43.
I thought this was unusual. Again, counter to my perception would be 48% claimed that they felt that the craft was alive or a living entity.
Yeah.
The craft itself.
That's cool. That would
That
be
is-
the best way to travel in space.
Yeah.
You just find it's like horses. You start out
Space horses.
riding the animals. They get around really good. They're built for it.
Yeah.
Like if we can find some good, like, space antelope or something.
Then there
Or they grow it, right? Like that's
Well,
the
like I was just
possibility.
thinking of those horseshoe things in those NASA
Yeah, I know.
videos that are like,
Yeah, the space plankton.
Yeah.
yeah.
now this is a similar question. These are similar questions, but these relate to encounters in a matrix-like reality.
what is a Matrix-like reality?
Like
I guess this would be
waking
like
up.
Ray having the sensation of being pulled out of his car, and all of a sudden he's somewhere else, and he's in.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he's been
Yeah,
pulled into
right,
some.
right,
yeah.
exactly. Or is it, they didn't take you out of your bed and walk you and physically take you
Yeah,
into a
they
craft.
woke you up
They're right.
into
This
a
is
different
that growing. All of a sudden you're in a white room,
Yeah.
no wall.
Yeah.
You can't tell the
Yeah.
difference between the wall and the ceiling, and that's how I interpret this. And there's probably a extensive explanation of this in the study. I just haven't read all of it. But the percentages were different. Like in this scenario, the human-looking aliens were the largest percentage. Those were 45%. Ghosts, spirit and ghost type were 36%. The short grays went down to 21%. So, and the reptilians went down to 11. So the percentages kind of flipped. So it makes you wonder, well, maybe there are different technologies at play here between
Yeah.
the different alien types or entity types. I keep referring to this standard model
Yeah.
alien thing, but it's we don't know what these entities are, or I think that's more.
I
or
think
less
alien is still apt. It's just maybe not
alien
extraterrestrial.
to our sense of reality.
Yeah. There may not be extraterrestrial so much, but they definitely are alien.
Here's some different questions. Like, did the ET contact experience happen when you were physically in your body? 61% said yes. Was your consciousness separated from your body at the time of the experience? 67% said yes. While in this matrix, were your thoughts sped up? 56.5% said yes. 27.3% said incredibly fast.
That sounds like a near-death experience almost.
Yeah, and then some. Another question was, were your senses more vivid than usual? 75.6% said yes.
Yeah. How can I don't understand the first two questions. I know you said that the percentages are.
This is the
Overlapping
difference
usually.
between experiences that were interpreted as being physical, like being in a craft or in your bedroom or in a place,
Yeah.
versus
Being taken out of your body.
well, yeah, maybe
Like that
so,
your
or
consciousness was
being
in
in
that
a
place.
place that you can't recognize as being physical.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
it's not in a room per se. It's
Okay.
in this nondescript
Yeah.
color. It's
Right.
hard to it's hard. I can visualize it, but I can't verbalize it.
Yeah. Okay. Just on a pink plane. Yeah.
Let's see. Here's one. Did you see deceased or religious spirits? 36.7% said yes. Did scenes from your past come back to you? 26.4% said yes.
Yeah.
Did you seem to enter some other unearthly world? 70%.
Wow. It does sound a lot like NDEs.
Did you feel peace or pleasantness? 73.3%. Again, that's very counter to what, the typical,
Yeah, scary.
yeah, exactly, being
That's
violated.
the stuff that makes news. That's what's written about. The scary stuff, right?
scary
The
stuff,
conflict.
Yeah,
the-
it makes for good, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah,
type.
it bleeds, it
Yeah.
leads. Yeah.
Yeah. Did time seem to slow down? 75.9% said yes. Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity with the universe? 68.5%. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? 58.5. Sounds like I need to get abducted.
Yeah, I know. That would ruin
Yeah,
this
be
show.
careful what you wish for.
But you can't keep it.
Yeah.
Right. You
yeah.
only have it.
Yeah,
It's just a
exactly.
glimpse.
Gone.
Yeah, it's a glimpse. Yep.
Okay. Did the reality of this multidimensional experience seem real to you? 83.4 said yes.
Yeah.
Multidimensional experience. Did you have knowledge of an ET council?
Okay.
That's a weird question.
Yeah.
That's a weird question. 39% said yes.
The Council of 50.
Yeah.
Freaking
Did
automatic
you-
Talk to the guy with the
Yeah.
most horns.
That's right.
That's what you say when you get abducted.
That's
Take me
right.
to the guy
Take
with
me
the
to
most
guy
horns.
with the most horns.
Did your experience involve some type of telepathic thought transfer? 78% said yes. Let's see. 46% stated that there was some type of communication. 34% stated that the information was scientific or technological in nature. 34% stated that the telepathic communication dealt with global or social political issues.
Yeah. Freaking custodians.
What percentage was that? 34 or something?
34%.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and again, we're going to get into this. You know, I know we touched on it last time, the deception aspect of this, but I'll tell you where I have a problem with it is that if, and maybe some of the later discussion we're going to look at maybe the answers to this question, but if you were this seemingly all-powerful entity being, and you have this technology that has, and you have the ability to travel anywhere you want. Nobody can do anything to stop you. You can hover over, secure nuclear facilities. You can take out aircraft. You can make all their systems fail. You can, in other words, they can go anywhere they want with impunity, and they can freeze people in place. They can pull them out of bed. They can take them in the middle of traffic. They can do all these things. If they wanted us to stop doing something, they would just tell us, cut it out.
Yeah, right. It's
You know
more
what I mean?
like it's something else that they're doing with that.
That's what I'm saying. It may be something that we don't understand it. Why? In other
Okay,
words,
so since it's some kind of mind-to-mind communication, the message is being lost somewhere, and people are interpreting it as like some kind of global.
That's a question that I did see in here. I believe there's. We'll get to that chart here eventually.
Well, I'm
But there-
sorry, you were getting somewhere with your thought. I didn't.
Yeah,
interrupt
in other
you.
words, they actually ask you, was the communication in your native language? Was one of the questions.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember the percentages, but some of them, I think they're not. In other words, not all of them are in your native language. It's
Yeah.
more visual or
Right.
open to interpretation. So that could be where some of this imagery may be misinterpreted, and we'll get to an example of that in the next segment of one aspect of the next encounter that we're going to discuss. There's a facet of that involved.
Just think about the way we deal with animals, like you got some ants in your house and they're just in there. They're like, crumbs, and then you have a council, right? You see the ants and then you're like, oh, and you and the other people in your house have this council around the ants. What are we going to do? Blah, 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 blah. All right, let's do this. And then, you might sweep some of them up and then curse at them. So in your own language, it's not in their language. And there's just this guy that's going, whoop, blah, 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 and then off they go in some craft and then they end up somewhere. It's like we do this with these other beings all the time.
Right.
I'm just saying.
It was waving its arms at me.
Yeah. Yeah, 78% of the ants said that they should stop fighting other ants after they had that experience.
That's right.
And that's what the beings told them.
Yeah, ants are very warlike people. Too.
That's right. Oh, here we're up at another break. Are you ready for a break?
Yeah, one last one, just
Okay.
because this is important, because I think we'll move on to something else in the next segment.
Okay.
One thing that is unusual, and again, this goes against the popular perception, is that these respondents were asked, would you stop your experiences if you could? 84% said no.
Yeah. Good on them.
91 of them felt that it was a positive experience. And
91%.
yes. And
Wow.
because there was highly positive, slightly positive, neutral, slightly negative, and highly negative. 51% were highly positive, 22% were slightly positive, 17% were neutral, 6% were slightly negative, and 4% were highly negative. So,
Man, there's definitely a reporting bias.
Yeah.
and
Or at least just whatever gets popular is usually...
the more often that the individuals claim to have had their experiences, some of them were over 20 experiences.
Yeah.
The more experiences they had,
The more
the
positive.
more
they got.
positive
Yeah.
they were.
And what you mean by reporting bias is in the media, right?
Yeah,
Not in
well-
the study.
No, not in the study.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more, I mean, I'm not a guy who does like deep dives into this subject, but just from my experience of like seeing these things on TV or reading about them in news stories or just looking at headlines and stuff in my news feed.
Yeah.
Most of them are like horrifying,
Yeah.
scary, all this, it's all this negative stuff.
Another,
So,
another thing
that's what I mean.
that's
Yeah.
included was how these encounters affected the individual. And there's a whole lot of them. We can't get through them all, but they became significant, overwhelming percentages said that it strongly affected them. Their sense of compassion, their sense of spiritual matters, appreciation for ordinary things in life. All of these were significantly increased.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen if you're just picked up in a nuts and bolts craft by some physical beings that have like awesome technology. Like,
Yeah.
why would that happen?
Right.
It's going to be. I mean, unless the technology is just off the charts stuff that we just can't
Yeah.
comprehend. That
If the technology is getting to the point where it's merging with something.
yeah, where people can only interpret it as a spiritual experience because they just can't grasp whatever it is, like whatever the technology is.
Yeah.
Also, a high percentage. We got a break here, so I haven't had time to find it in here. But a very high percentage of these experiencers also had gained abilities such as precognitive abilities,
Yep.
psychic abilities, and everything as a result of their experience. A very high percentage. I'm
Yeah.
going to say it was in the 85% range.
Yeah. Very common.
Here's the one on the communications. Was the communication in your native language? 75% said yes, 25% said no. Did the ET impart reassuring messages? 61% said yes. Did the ET provide you with a spiritual message? 54% said yes. Did the ET give you a message of love or oneness? 54%. Did they express concern for humanity's behavior? 45%.
Hey, that's less
it was-
than half.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess
and-
those people don't start the cults.
right, and I mean, then there's just there's hundreds of questions. There's
Yeah.
705. So
We're going to read them all.
right, did the ET tell you about the concept of time? 30% said yes. Communications concerning the afterlife, 29%.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Man.
just summarize this, I encourage everybody to pick this thing up. I'll post a link to it on the Discord.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, everybody can kind of dig into it. I think everybody will find something that interests them because it's a really, really expansive study.
Yeah.
So,
All right,
cool.
man. Thank you. Taking a break.
75% said snakes.